What would have happened had I stopped my car? To preface this, I love to drive. Like hour-long drives to nowhere with no destination in mind, just me, my music, and the road ahead of me. Living in Nebraska, I'd often take back roads or lonely highways, cutting through the countryside to small towns and eventually cities. And I'd usually take these drives at night, since there was less traffic to worry about. I've done it since I had my license 4 to 5 years ago, and I never once had any sort of issue, nor had I had any sort of trouble. That was until a few nights ago. For reference, I'm a relatively small 22-year-old female, and as I stated before, I often take these drives completely and utterly alone. They're a good way to clear my mind when I'm stressed, upset, or overwhelmed, or for me to get a plan together to sort personal issues out. I've also done these long and lonely drives to get away from the toxicity of my household when I used to live with my parents and as a means of coping with their alcoholism. Though now that I've moved out of the house and am a much better place mentally, I don't really have the urge to get in my car and just drive anymore. However, on the night this event took place, I was feeling pretty overwhelmed, stressed, and anxious, with a clusterfuck of personal issues I'd rather not get into. I felt restless and irritable around my boyfriend, couldn't focus on anything else, and decided I would take a long drive to clear my mind. My boyfriend was understanding and told me to be careful and not to be gone for too terribly long, since it was getting pretty late at night. I agreed, gave him a kiss goodbye, and left. I drove around our city for about 30 minutes, but I was still feeling on edge when everything transpiring in my personal life. So I decided to keep driving further north down those dark, familiar, winding one-lane highways. I kept the car at a steady 65 miles per hour, taking the turns at a slower pace in case a deer jumped out around the bend, and was just admiring the vast empty darkness of the snow-capped fields and barren trees. It was honestly a bit creepy being all alone with no cars in sight, in seemingly the middle of nowhere, the few houses miles back from the road lightless, and the dead cornfields withered away and covered in snow. It was like something out of a horror movie. And I was half expecting to see a ghost pop up in my rearview mirror, or see someone clamber out from the patches of trees dotting the horizon. The only light came from my headlights, and even then I still strained to see through the icky darkness of the night. By now it was just after 11 p.m., and I told myself that once I made the familiar roundabout that would either take you to a small town or back up towards the city, I would head back to the city and home. That roundabout will maybe be 15 to 25 minutes away, but other than my imagination picturing the worst, I wasn't really all that concerned. I mean, I was by myself. I didn't have any other motorists to worry about, right? Wrong. As I'm rounding another bend, I notice a vehicle with its hazards flashing maybe a quarter of a mile or something away from me. It was some sort of sedan, dark-colored, and was angled to where only the part of it on the shoulder, while the rest was jutted out onto the road, like they had to pull over in a hurry and didn't quite manage to do so. The driver's side door was flung wide open, and as I slowed my vehicle down and angled it towards the opposite side of the road to pass, I could only make out what looked like maybe blood on the inside of the open door. I didn't see anyone on the road or in the car, and I was the only motorist in sight. Cell phone reception is spotty at best in this part of the country, but most often than not, you couldn't really get reception no matter how hard you prayed, which was definitely the case when I took a glance at my phone just to see if I had any service. So, a lone female on the road at night, pulling up a near vacant vehicle that looks like someone had been attacked on the inside with no cell service. Now, I am no dummy. I've watched countless episodes of Investigation Discovery and Criminal Minds, and read far too many true crime books to know that this is a bad and dangerous idea. But there was still a part of me that got worried that something terrible had happened to whoever was inside that vehicle, and I thought I needed to help. These roads don't get a lot of traffic late at night, and the temperatures are well below freezing. If someone were hurt or in trouble, there was no way and nothing anyone else could do or help them but me. Still, I erred on the side of caution. I was still driving my car, though a bit more slowly, and as I approached the vehicle, I rolled down my passenger window a little bit, shut off the music, and called out, "Hey, anyone there? Are you okay?" I didn't hear a response. I worried they were passed out somewhere, but I wasn't about to get out and look for them. I told myself I'd called out one last time, and if I didn't hear anything, I would just leave, and the moment there was reception, I'd call it in. And if I did hear someone, then I'll figure out my next course of action then. So, again, I shout, "Hey! What happened? Are you okay?" There was a silence for a beat, and then I heard rustling in the shadows of the trees, followed by a gruff voice saying, "Yeah!" I was relieved at first and was about to say something in response or possibly even stop my car and get out when I noticed three things nearly simultaneously. As I inched my way past the front of the sedan, I noticed there was no damage to the hood or anywhere else on the vehicle, which I found to be strange considering the blood on the inside of the door. In my rearview mirror, I caught a glance of someone coming out from behind the sedan, and they were making their way towards my car. Fast! The person did not have any blood on them or appeared injured in any way, shape, or form, wearing a mask. Not like a face mask or a COVID mask or a ski mask or anything normal, but one of those masks you see in the Purge movies, and they were holding something in their hand. I don't know what it was. I couldn't get a good look from its length and shape. My guess was maybe a tire iron or a crowbar or something. I don't really need to tell you that I slammed on the gas the moment I noticed those things and drove like bats straight out of hell. My heart thundering in my chest and my entire body shaking. My window was still rolled down in my haste and the music was still shut off, so I could very clearly hear someone, definitely a man, shouting at me. Though I had no clue what they were saying, I just had to get out of there immediately. I stole one last look in my rearview mirror as I drove away, mostly to see if they were getting in their sedan to follow or chase me or if they had stopped. The man with the weapon was still standing in the middle of the road watching me, and right before I looked away from the mirror, I saw a second man emerge from the trees that had been rustling earlier, also wearing one of those creepy masks and no trace of blood on him. I probably broke every law for speeding that night, but I wanted to get as far away from those men as possible, and as soon as I made it to the roundabout, I turned towards town, parked in the Walmart parking lot that thankfully still had cars from who I can assume were workers closing up shop, and proceeded to have a full-on meltdown. When I can pull myself together again, I called one of my friends, T, who was a police officer, to tell him what happened and what I should do. He was concerned for me and asking me if I was okay, where I was, did they follow, etc. It was out of city limits. He couldn't do much on his end, but he could get in contact with the local police and sheriff in that jurisdiction to take my statement and check it out. I agreed, thanked him, and while I waited for police to show up, I called my boyfriend. Through my hysterical sobs and panics, I managed to tell him what happened not even 10 or so minutes ago. He was, as you could imagine, super freaked out for my safety and wanted me to either come home immediately or drive down himself to take me home. I told him the police were on their way to take my statement, so I couldn't leave and that I was okay, but I stayed on the phone with him until I saw the familiar police cruisers pulling up into the lot. I gave the police my statement, and they assured me that they will go to the spot I told them the sedan had been to take a look, and they will try to catch the guys who did it. Though with no cameras and no description of the men, I wasn't sure they'd be able to. I didn't even get the license plate number, though at the time of my panic, the thought never came to mind until the police were asking if I got it. All they had to go off of was a dark-colored sedan and two guys with masks. After I gave my statement, I went home and stayed curled up close to my boyfriend the whole night, listening to every sound the house made, in fear it may be those guys arriving any minute to finish what they had started. Since the incident, I haven't heard back from the police on whether or not they have any leads, but I'm not sure they ever will. I'm just thankful I'm still here and that I didn't stop or get out of my car. I'm not sure what would have been of me if I did. I still have so many questions that have no answers. What were they doing? Why? What was that blood on the inside of the car? Or was this just some ruse to get some attention? If it was really blood, did they hurt someone else to get it? What would have happened to me if I had stopped my car? Needless to say, I won't be going on any more late night drives to anywhere, and I hope I never cross paths with those freaks again. Scary encounter with a stranger. I'm a process server. If you don't know what it is, I basically deliver legal papers to people at their home or place of work. These papers could be anything from foreclosures to subpoenas to child support papers, etc. I have to serve papers to plenty of criminals and just sketchy people in general, so I always try to be very careful. Sometimes I serve papers at night because people tend to be home more often after 5 p.m. Sometimes I have to serve papers to people who live way out in the woods in the middle of nowhere. These people are my least favorite to serve now, and I will explain why. A few months ago, I had to serve a paper to someone who lived way out in the woods. I probably drove 25 minutes out into the middle of nowhere. It was also when there was still snow on the ground and was really dark outside. I live in one of the most northern states. Winters are brutal. This situation already made me feel nervous because I was in the middle of nowhere and I had bad cell reception. If my car broke down somehow or I got a flat tire, I would be in major trouble. Once I started to pull up to the house, I decided not to pull all the way into the driveway because it didn't look very well plowed and I didn't want my car getting stuck. They had a short driveway that went up to a tall fence, so the back of my car was sticking out a few inches towards the road because I didn't pull all the way in. When I went to walk up towards the house, I realized the fence was padlocked and it was too tall to go over. There was really no way for me to get to the house unless I broke the padlock or somehow climbed up the fence. I was pretty sure the house wasn't being used though, so I decided to just leave. I got back in my car and tried to back out. My front tires were on the driveway and it got stuck in the snow. I tried to turn my tires different directions and it seemed to be working a little bit. I kept doing that and then went forward a bit and then back again to try to wiggle my way out, I guess. I was doing that for what seemed like forever, probably only around 5 minutes, and then I started to get really nervous. I pulled a shovel out of my trunk and started to scoop the snow from under my car. Once I thought it was good enough, I tried to back out again. It seemed to work a little bit, but it wasn't good enough to fully get my car unstuck. Then I saw a truck start to drive up the road. At first, I was almost happy because I thought there was no one out here. They slowed down when they saw my car and then started to drive over to my side of the road. I assumed they were going to get out or roll down their window and ask if I needed help. I turned around to wait for the truck to stop, but instead of pulling over to the side of the road, they parked directly behind my car. I remember how my stomach sank, and I got this really terrible feeling in my gut. They pulled their truck directly and closely behind my car, so I could not back up, even if I tried. If I tried to back out of that spot, I would have T-boned them in reverse. I had to turn my body around to see the driver. They didn't get out or roll down their window. They just sat in the truck, blocking me in. I couldn't see the driver very well because it was so dark outside, but I knew it was a man. I think he was waiting for me to get out of my vehicle, but I just sat there, kept my doors locked. We sat there for what felt like a really long time, and when another car started driving up the road, the car then starts to drive out from behind my vehicle and starts going up the road before the other car reaches mine. The car doesn't stop, but keeps on driving behind the truck. This is when I see the truck pull over on the side of the road and waits for the other car to drive by. This is when I decided I had to get out of that driveway because I was not waiting for that truck to come back for me. I pulled my car in reverse, and instead of trying to inch it out, I literally slammed on the gas and my car shot out of the driveway backwards. I almost went into the ditch on the other side of the road, but I slammed on my brakes just in time. I then slammed on the gas again and drove my car in the opposite direction of the truck. I looked in my rearview mirror once while driving away and saw that the truck had started to drive away in the other direction. I was so relieved, but instantly my eyes started to tear up because I didn't really know what had just happened. I can't say what the other person was going to do to me, but deep in my gut, I felt like I had just escaped something terrible. So, creepy guy in the truck, let's not meet again. And to everyone who has to drive for their job late at night, and anyone else that is driving at night in general, please be careful and cautious. The road is a dangerous place for many reasons.